Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going over my custom Mandalorian knee pads, as well as the shoe guards that I came up with. The free templates will be uploaded to the link in the description as soon as I can get access to a scanner, but the process for these pieces is pretty similar to what we've been doing, so these pieces should be pretty simple. So first we'll start off with the knee pads, and this black foam is going to form the attachments that are on either side of the knee piece. When you make these pieces, you will have the template, so you won't have to measure out everything like I am here. All you would have to do is trace it out with a Sharpie and cut it out like normal. I'm just measuring here because I haven't actually made the template yet, but I will remember all of the measurements and make sure the template matches what I'm doing here. Now we're going to be cutting out the base of the knee pad, and this is very similar to the elbow pad on the gauntlets, so if you manage to get through that, then you shouldn't have any trouble here. I'm just tracing it out onto 6mm craft foam. This is the same type of foam as the black foam earlier, so the color really doesn't matter. I do prefer to use white foam because the Sharpie tends to show up better, but otherwise they're exactly the same. Now when you're cutting these side panels out, you'll want to bevel the rounded edge, and it is much easier to bevel it while it is still stuck in the foam, rather than cutting it out and then beveling it afterward. In order to bevel it, all you have to do is tilt your knife at an angle, about 45 degrees is fine, and then just hold that angle throughout the entire cut. As you can see here, when you cut out the left and right sides, you'll want to make sure that you bevel them in opposite directions, or else you will end up with 2 left side pieces or 2 right side pieces, which is fine if you're going to make 2 knee pads. Just wanting to point that out so you don't end up with 3 knee pads. Cutting out the centerpiece is pretty straightforward. I didn't bevel the edges because the bevel on the side pieces is enough of an angle. And here I'm just going to create a little indent on the inside section of the side panel. Later we'll fill this with hot glue and bend it so that it forms a nice angle. This is just a simple V groove, so make sure that you don't cut all the way through it. Now I'm going to go over each of the pieces with a heat gun. This will allow me to bend each of them in the direction they're supposed to go, and it will also harden the surface of the foam a little bit to help with painting. Now we can start to glue the side panels onto the centerpiece, and I'm just going to use hot glue for this part. Contact cement would definitely be easier to work with, but I don't want to deal with the smell at the moment, so hot glue will work just as well. When working with hot glue around rounded edges like this, you have to do it in sections where you glue on just the tip and then you continue on, only gluing a little bit at a time. If you try to glue too much with hot glue all at once, it will result in a mess and nothing will stick properly. So if you are using hot glue, then be sure to take your time with this step. If you find that you have a little bit of extra material hanging off of the end, then don't worry, you can just cut it off by placing it onto a flat surface and use a ruler to make a new line. It's better to have too much material than to have too little. Now we're going to attach these side pieces onto the knee. I forgot to record the black pieces being made. However, the small piece is just two halves put together, and the large piece is built the same way that I made the flamethrower, which has a video of its own. Since these pieces are large, flat surfaces, I'm going to use a contact cement replacement called rubber cement. It is not quite as strong, however, it works fine in this case. Since these pieces are not going to be pulled on very often, they just need to sit there, so rubber cement will work fine. To apply rubber cement, you just have to paint it onto both surfaces and wait for it to dry before you put them together. Here's a quick time lapse of the glue drying. I found that if you let it sit out too long, it will actually dry out too much, and then you'd have to apply a second coat, or a third coat even, but one coat is probably not enough. I also added a few dots of super glue just to help with the adhesion, but I don't think it's super necessary. Now for this little missile pod thing that Boba Fett has on his knee, this was made the same way that I made the flamethrower. I'll put a link to that video, so go check it out. I just used 4 pieces of foam this time instead of 3. Now I'm going to attach an elastic strap to the back side of the knee in order to hold it onto my leg. Originally, I was going to use rubber cement along with super glue to hold this on, but quickly found out that hot glue is the better option, especially when dealing with fabric. It seems to work really well. When cutting the elastic, you'll want to make sure that you have enough to wrap around your leg and onto both sides of the knee guard without constricting your leg too much. This will all depend on how big your leg is. Now I'm going to hot glue on a small pad of insulation foam on the inside of the knee pad, just to boost that knee pad out from my leg a little bit. Otherwise it would be, too flat against my leg and that wouldn't really look right. This type of foam can act as a sponge and it will absorb the hot glue if you're not careful. So when you're pushing this down onto the surface with the hot glue on it, you'll want to make sure that you don't push too hard, or else that glue will just absorb up into the foam like a sponge and it won't stick properly. So just press it down lightly and wait for the hot glue to dry. So that's all for the knee pads, and if you do make 2 of them, be sure to switch around the attachments on the sides so that they both have the rocket on the outside. Here I will quickly go over the process of making the shoes. First of all, you'll want to have a pair of shoes that fit you properly and you don't mind using for cosplay. Since there are no shoelaces in the Star Wars universe, I'm going to be cutting off the laces and gluing the shoe centerpiece in a place that would allow me to slip my foot in, but also provide a decent enough amount of resistance so that my shoe won't just fall off whenever I try to walk. This can be a tricky spot to find, so you'll want to test fit it several times before you make the final cut, or else you'll end up with a shoe that you can't fit into, and we don't want that. I wanted to add some plates on top of the shoe to hide the laces that were already there, so I cut these small pieces of foam out and just added some little details on it. And the rest of the process is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to bend it a little bit and then hot glue it onto the shoe. And that wraps up this video, guys. Thanks for tuning in again after such a long break. I appreciate everybody supporting the channel, especially my Patreons who have stuck with me for so long. There's only a few more videos left in this Mandalorian costume build, and afterwards I'm planning to make some more Clone Wars content. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye guys!